Thank you for coming. My name is Dirk Moss. I'm on the Town of Central Game Team Commission. Unfortunately, tonight we do not have a projector. We were planning on having a projector, but we don't have one. So if you'd like to, this will be
a surprise! You get to practice looking at really small things.
This will be our screen tonight. If you want to move closer, feel free. If you're not a member of my mailing list and you would like to be, please let me know. Next month, February, the speaker will be Kathleen Logan-Smith of the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. She will talk on genetically modified organisms, GMOs. Sounds like it would be very interesting. And in March, the topic will be forest relief, which they will talk on the benefits of community trees. Upcoming community events, February 5th at the zoo, a free talk, The Science Behind Climate Change, where we scientists from the University of Illinois, Stanford University, and the zoo. That's free.
What's the date on that?
February 5th, 7:30 p.m. at the zoo. If you go to stlzoo.org, you'll find more information. And some of you were here for the beekeeping talk. There will be a beekeeping workshop on February 9th. It's all day. They have courses for advanced and for beginners. And it's at Merritt's. If you go to easternmobeekeepers.com, there's more information. That is not free. And as always, there are free reusable grocery bags. Take all you want. I still have a lot in my basement. And there's something new this month, and I will call on Linda Holtzgren to tell us about it.
Well, it's just a bucket of old magazines or books recycled that are left over of mine and I've gathered, and you can take one, recycle it, bring it back, return it, and some of yours to recycle, and I'll bring the bucket every speaker event.
So there are books on the environment and
Pretty much, we keep it green related, otherwise the bucket can't hold it. Like all your old Time magazines or something.
so please take a look.
Take whatever you want, there's quite a few there.
Tonight's speaker is Rachel Levi. Rachel is she's EarthDance Farms Community Education Coordinator. She grew up tending a compost pile and picking tomatoes in her mother's garden. And she worked at Wild Oats Natural Market for several years, and that's where she got her interest in sustainable food. Her primary interest is in education that brings connection, joy, and resilience to individuals and communities. And she's been with EarthDance since 2010. Her responsibilities include community outreach, that's what we're doing tonight, program development, grantsmanship, and youth education. She enjoys doing farm work along with EarthDance's apprentices and other visitors. Though she would not describe herself as a farmer, she has had 5 years vegetable growing experience in urban and suburban settings, and she hopes she can be of assistance to the gardeners assembled tonight. So please welcome Rachel Levi.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much, Dirk. I really appreciate you guys coming out. I wasn't sure if folks were here more to learn about EarthDance or if they had specific questions about their spring gardening. As I wanted Dirk to make clear, I don't consider myself a farmer, although I've done some growing. I do my own home gardening, and I've been working alongside EarthDance apprentices at the farm for the last couple of years. And then I also gathered that this is just kind of a cool thing that people come out for on a regular basis. So if you didn't know what to expect tonight, I appreciate you guys being here to hear me talk about EarthDance anyway. So what is EarthDance? We say that we grow food, farmers, and community. So of course we are a farm. We are located at a historic site, the Miller Organic Farm in Ferguson, Missouri. It's been in organic production since 1883. Yeah, so 3 generations of family farmers who apparently had long-lived organic farmers out there working the soil, creating really beautiful, rich till, and we've been trying to maintain that legacy. So let's see, backing up, I wonder who in here is a farmer or gardener? Like food gardener, maybe? Yeah. So I really applaud you guys for doing that. EarthDance aims to grow more local food and grow more local farmers and gardeners. We do this through an apprenticeship program in organic agriculture. It's a 9-month-long part-time program to train people in organic agriculture from seed to market. So we try to give people a really comprehensive view. This can be helpful for people who are just aiming to become more sustainable on their own, grow more of their own food, as well as people who have like a bit of an itch. They're thinking they've got farm dreams, but they're not sure how they can pull it off. People who have lives in the city or nearby that they don't want to uproot in order to go live on a farm full time and do a more traditional internship that would involve like living on a farm. So our apprenticeship program takes about 10 hours a week over the course of 9 months to complete. And when you finish it, you will have spent a significant amount of time selling at farmers markets, a significant amount of time growing in the fields, so doing everything that would be required of your traditional organic farmer, producing mixed vegetable CSA, community supported agriculture, and selling to the public through the markets and in wholesale settings. So let's see, I want to back up and talk a little bit more about EarthDance, the Miller Farm, as a site of historic importance to us all. So obviously 1883, significantly before organic was trendy. The Millers were German immigrants. They settled in North St. Louis County before it was really North St. Louis County, before there was a Ferguson, for example, which is where it's now located. The town grew around it. It was 200 acres at its founding, and the parcels were slowly sold off. But Al and Caroline Miller, the most recent generation of Millers to farm the land, stayed there on 14 acres that they were insistent would not be sold off during their lifetime. Al was born on the farm, and he spent his whole life there. He and his wife built their own little brick bungalow in the 1940s, which was also right about the time that the Green Revolution was really taking off, and the newest scientific methods involved chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides. So there was one year that the farm was actually not under organic production. Al decided to try out some of the new scientific methods, and he had a really intense health reaction to using chemical pesticides. And he was very sick for a few weeks, and he decided that they were poisons, and he didn't want to put them on his crops, and he didn't want to use them, for his own health purposes, and he didn't want to sell food to other people that had those products on them. So at that point, he began to really dig into the methods that he had been using traditionally, the ones that he had learned from his parents. He continued working with mules, even though he did purchase a tractor at one point, but he decided that it was kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, because you might get more work out of a tractor, it might go faster, but you got tractor payments then, whereas the mules, he owned them outright, and he considered them friends, and he enjoyed having the byproducts of the mules. So Al Miller became a pioneer of organic in this area since he was practicing in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s. As there became a growing awareness of an interest in organics His food, he was shipping his sweet potatoes around the country. Some of them went to California. But primarily, he grew for the local market. The other farmers at the farmers markets used to tease him and say that he was the farmer who liked bugs in his produce. But he was very committed to it and very fascinated by organic methods. He did things like buying ladybugs and praying mantises and importing them to his farm for the purpose of beneficial insects, creating an ecosystem on his farm. He was interested in all different types of manure. He would go to the zoo and try out zebra manure, elephant manure. And of course he was into all sorts of other organic methods such as cover cropping, so growing things that are not for the purpose of selling, but just for the purpose of building your soil, nitrogen building plants, and crop rotation, another big practice of organic. So he left this amazing legacy of really beautiful, thick topsoil at the same time that the giant egg that has become the way that most of us eat today was really taking over. So as small family farms were being sold off to big agribusiness, Al maintained his 14 acres using small, sustainable methods that he could pull off for most of the year. They would hire some teenagers from the neighborhood every summer. We at EarthDance really feel like that's something to celebrate and maintain. So in terms of how did EarthDance get started, EarthDance was started by Molly Rockman. Oh, the pictures of her are just going to be really, really too small. So something else along here that would be of interest. So here's a shot of the farm, looking very tidy there. That's probably fall. We have a lot easier time keeping it looking all neat like that. During the summertime we have a lot of weeds, but we also grow a lot of food. Last year we grew about 10,000 pounds of food, which was, for us, we were really pleased by that since it was a drought year. And here's a photo of one of our apprentices with some of the rainbow carrots that she's cleaning for market. So EarthDance's roots. Molly Rockman is a Ferguson girl. She's the founder of EarthDance. And she visited the farm when she was 15 years old, and she was really impressed by it. She thought that it was just a special, cool place, and she met Caroline and Al, who were elderly at the time, and she became aware that they didn't have children, and that the future of the farm was kind of up in the air. She kept that in the back of her mind. She went off and did environmental studies at Eckerd College in Florida, and she went on to do some work in Fiji and Ghana, promoting the organic farming industry in those countries. But she came back to St. Louis to help out in her family business when her father was sick. Her family has a t-shirt printing shop in Ferguson. And while she was back helping at the t-shirt printing shop, she started investigating the Miller farm again because she wanted to remain involved in organic agriculture. And by this time it was 2008, and neither Caroline nor Al Miller were still farming. Al had passed away in 1999, and Caroline was living by herself but no longer able to do any farming. So she was renting by the acre. She was renting plots of land on the farm to other interested farmers. One of whom was John Wilkerson, who was a former president of the Missouri Organic Association. He had come out and tested the farm's soil and found it to be the best he had ever worked with, actually. So Molly met John at the Ferguson Farmers Market, and she asked if she could volunteer with him. He said, yeah, I'd welcome you to come work. I pay in sugar snap peas. And through her work at the farm, Molly began to have a vision for what it could be. She imagined it as a place that the community could come and learn from the land and learn about the history of the farm, and that it could eventually become just a really special place that would contribute to the region's understanding of the importance of local organic food and organic farming, and become a place where community could really be built. Because she noticed that people working together on a farm, somehow the conversation seems to flow when you're kneeling side by side, weeding and picking for a market. So she decided in 2008 to approach the Open Space Council of Missouri. Is anyone familiar with the Open Space? They're a land trust organization in the greater St. Louis area. So they work to preserve open natural spaces in all of their glory. And she wondered if they might be interested in preserving an organic farm. It was a little bit different than anything they had done before. Usually they've worked with parks or places that people would like to have become a park. They do stream cleanup type work. But this was a new project for them, and indeed they were interested. So in 2008 and beginning of 2009, the partnership between Open Space and a new organization, EarthDance, developed. And 2009 was the first year that the EarthDance Organic Apprenticeship took off. That year there were 12 apprentices working with Molly Rockman in the fields, and at the time they each maintained their own 10 by 10 plot, as well as working a communal area. And from the communal vegetables, they would take those to market, just the Ferguson market at the time, and sell to the public. And it seemed like it was just an idea that a lot of people in St. Louis were hungry for, the idea of a place to learn more about how food is produced, to get their hands dirty, but at the same time do it on a timeline that was accessible for people who are working. So it is a commitment of about 10 hours a week. And then the next year, 2010, there were suddenly about 30 apprentices. So it grew quite remarkably from one year to the next. And at the same time, it seemed like it was time for the organization to rent more land and really be able to serve more people in terms of how much food we were producing. I joined the organization in late 2010, and I saw Fall's Bounty, but I hadn't really heard about how it had been a hard year. Apparently it was a tough summer, as we've been experiencing a lot of lately. So summer had been a lot harder, but fall was an amazing bounty, and so we thought, okay, well, we're doing a good thing. Let's continue to expand. It went from 1 acre growing the very first year to 4.5 in 2011. And we obtained a tractor, and the staff grew a little bit, and it seemed like we were ready to take off. We did a 60-person public CSA in addition to our apprentices. There were about 35 of them at the time. So it was about a 100-person CSA. It was, frankly, too large for where the organization was at the time, and it was a great lesson in building towards sustainability in slow, moderate, progressive steps instead of biting off more than you could chew. So EarthDance has since downsized a little bit in terms of our commitment to how much food we're growing, how many people we are committed to serve, and just how much land we're farming. So we've gone back to farming just 1 acre, which has turned out to be, for where we are as an organization, a lot more sustainable and a lot more pleasurable for our apprentices. 2012 was, for that reason, a significantly easier year on everybody, even though 115 during the summer was still a real challenge. So I think I'll just say a little bit more about where we hope the organization can go now. 2012 was also a really special year for us in that we were finally able to purchase the farm, which had been a goal of the organization's for the last several years. EarthDance had been in negotiation with the family trust, with relatives of Caroline's, who were themselves not particularly interested in farming, and were kind of, thought that it was a good thing that we were farming, but they would be happy with whomever was able to pay the top dollar for the farm, which raised a lot of concern for us. We were just concerned that someone else would come along and want to develop the land into, Walmart or something like that. But now that we have purchased the farm, we're in the process of securing a conservation easement for the property, which would ensure that it would stay zoned agricultural and be held to a long-term lease for the purpose of staying a farm. We're hoping that we will be able to add to the farm's infrastructure. We hope to purchase a modern tractor this year to increase the efficiency of our farming operation and be able to demonstrate that to folks who would like to be able to see a more mechanized model. We're hoping that in the next few years we'll add event space so that we can do indoor classrooms. We are fortunate enough to be able to borrow space at a local church, but it would be great if all of the events that we could do would take place on the farm. We hope to have demonstration gardens so that the public can learn from earth dance, not necessarily just as a farm, but also to model a smaller scale things that people can do at home. And finally, we'd really like to do a commercial kitchen. We're hoping to be able to teach processing so that that can be another aspect of the program, and that other farmers in the area who would like to be able to produce a value-added product but don't necessarily have the ability to pay for full-time usage of a commercial kitchen could rent it on like a pop-up basis. All right, so
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
your internship?
Absolutely.
Or apprenticeship?
yeah.
Like those 10 hours, is that scheduled by Earth Dance on particular days?
Yeah, well, the farm is usually, it's kind of changed, varying from year to year depending on our staffing situation. But we do have usually 4 or 5 open days a week on the farm. And then apprentices do choose their schedule from a set of open shifts that are available to them. And of those 10 hours a week, an hour and a half is actually a weekly enrichment session. So some of those are classes, as I've talked about, classes taught by other expert farmers in the area on subjects that are kind of their specialty, or they are field trips to other local farms. Classes are on topics like soil stewardship and the techniques thereof, pest and disease management in organic systems, and we also do a few classes on food preservation, so like old school traditional methods like fermentation or drying, and then also canning and freezing, things like that.
So do you spend much time with planting? You said earlier from seed to
Yeah, so we, at this point, we borrow greenhouse space. We hope in the next couple of years to be able to construct a greenhouse that if we are able to receive funding for it, we'd like to have it be a community greenhouse space, so something that the local community gardens could use as well, and other farmers who have operations that are on a small enough scale that they haven't purchased their own greenhouse yet. So right now we rent space at North County Tech. It's actually a really wonderful partnership. They're a high school in the area, a technical high school, and they loan us the space, so we use it free of charge. So that gets started in just another few weeks. We'll be planting the peppers and the tomatoes, the stuff that likes a long lead time before it goes out into the field. And our apprenticeship gets started in mid-February and runs through mid-November. Lots of time planting, lots of time weeding, lots of time harvesting, other things that we do kind of as needed. Trellising tomatoes is one thing. We do a trellis method rather than the stakes that you might be, or the cages that a lot of folks are used to, because it's a more economically efficient method. Various different methods of pest and disease prevention, like using row cover over our crops, spraying occasionally for pests using organic sprays, fertilizing with materials like willow tea and fish emulsion, seaweed. Some of the typical activities. And then, of course, the marketing and preparing our CSA shares. So community supported agriculture, is that a familiar term for folks? that don't seem to know. So community-supported agriculture, it's a method of direct consumer relationships for selling vegetables. Farms engage in a CSA when they sell shares to members, so people will pay in advance for a season's worth of vegetables, and then each week they receive a share of the harvest. So all of our farmers are members of our CSA, all of our apprentices and staff, and then 10 members of the public last year and this coming season as well. Any other questions about EarthDance or, yes?
You mentioned classes.
Mhm.
Are they available? Are they open to the public?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, Dirk. I was going to get to that. This will be the first year that we've opened them up a la carte to the public. Previously, we had kind of thought, well, like they're interesting to our apprentices because our apprentices are, like seeing the whole picture and seeing the development of the farm. And it kind of hadn't really occurred to people yet at EarthDance that maybe the public would also be interested in those just on a one-off basis. So yes, we're finalizing our schedule right now, and then those will be available for folks that just want to take a class or two without committing to the whole apprenticeship.
Are they one-day classes? Or?
They are Monday evenings from 6 p.m. to 7:30. And we'll be starting off with principles of greenhouse seeding. That'll be beginning of March. And heading into a few classes about soil, classes about the farmer's market situation, things like that. Those are our spring offerings.
Will that be on your website?
Sure, yes.
With the historic class with the farm, are there any seed saving vine millers that you've been able to do heirloom things with them, or was that just
Well,
not available?
there definitely any seeds that they had saved were no longer viable to.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, going through old farmhouse things, we've found mostly a lot of magazines, like a lot of organic gardening going back to the 60s. Not so many seeds, but various different farm things. I'm not sure how much of a practice that was of his. I'm not sure whether he was, because you can do organic using hybrid seeds. So I don't know whether he was more into the heirloom or if he was more into the hybrids.
Right.
We do some seed saving. We do some open pollinated varieties. We've saved our own okra and our own garlic for several years in a row. But we do a big mix of a lot of different types of tomatoes, for example. Since we do a real mixed approach for the CSA and just have a diversity for markets, we have things that would cross-pollinate with each other growing too closely, so we can't save all of our own seeds because they would not ring true to breeding anymore.
What's your approach to the drought last year and this coming spring?
Like, how did we address it?
Yes.
Well, it was very challenging last year. Our irrigation system at the time were broadcast sprinklers, which is not as efficient a method as we would choose to be using. We have received a significant donation for drip irrigation this year, which is definitely a more efficient means of assuring your watering. We did a lot of hand watering too. We would drag hoses around and watering cans. We were farming about 1.5 acres this past year, so even though it's tough, it was a manageable amount to keep watered. And it's pretty frightening, and it really seems to me that all of the conventional farmers and all of the beef herders, they got hit this past year by the droughts. I would hope that people are beginning to wake up and perceive that climate change is real and that we have to do something about it, because these summers have been intense.
Does it look like it's going to be a bad season?
I mean, I have heard, I feel like the climate is becoming so unpredictable that it's hard to know. I've heard from several people that we're probably in a 7-year drought cycle, so the next 4 years or so are probably going to be similarly hot and dry during the summer. But who knows? Oh, I can hear it.
I'm a member of the Town Country Community Garden here, and a few of us went to a symposium or a community garden symposium last February or March.
Through Gateway Greening?
Gateway Greening,
Uh-huh.
right. Are you familiar with that? Or
Yes.
Did you take part in that at all?
I did. Yeah, I attended it and I met with people I didn't speak,
Uh-huh.
things like that.
But, that was a good forum for getting the word out, and
Yeah.
I was interested in the heirloom seeds and the different seeds we could get.
Yeah, it was an amazing keynote address. If anyone else was able to make it, there was a great keynote address at the Garden Summit by, what is his name?
From Iowa?
Yeah, the guy from Decorah, Iowa, Seed Savers Exchange guy.
Right.
Founder of Seed Savers Exchange, just on why it's important to preserve these heirloom varieties and the significant loss of diversity that the consumer market for vegetables has experienced. Like he's was showing slides where there were like hundreds of varieties of lettuce that were in common production, and now there's like 19.
But that would be I'm assuming they're going to do it again this.
Yeah, I've seen ads for it already. Gateway Greening is a good friend of ours. We actually, the very first year that EarthDance got started, they provided a donation of a lot of our tools that we got started with, and we're very supportive of what they do, at least in the sense of all of the gardening projects that they support.
Now, do you still have the original 14 acres still?
The 14 acres is intact. At this point, we ourselves are growing on an acre and a half. We also, this year, are able to rent parcels of it to some of our graduates, which is kind of cool. And another woman who didn't do the program but is friendly with EarthDance, who's going to be doing chickens, broiler chickens, at the farm this year.
On your watering, is it county water right now, or was it ever like on a well, or
It is
why did
county
that
water.
family move in that area? Was it, different than back then?
There was a well, it has collapsed, and it's not something that we can open up at any reasonable expense, so we have county water right now. Yes?
Have you pursued any steps for collecting rainwater and using that to irrigate?
Well, the things that you can do along those lines are like creating a pond reservoir and then pumping water back up. We took a field trip last spring to go visit a farm in the Columbia area, the Salad Garden, that does have has that kind of system. And honestly, it's just not within. I think they worked with the federal government to get a pretty good grant to do their pond system. And it's pretty cool if you ever have a chance to get out and see that. But that's not something that we're pursuing right now. We probably, now that we will be moving into the Little Brick House as our office, we'll probably do water catchment there and do some gardening with, just some rain barrels. But it's not quite something that we can do for the entire farm at this point.
So this is a two-part question. EarthDance now owns like the 14 acres?
We do, yes. The open space was very helpful in helping us secure the money that we needed to pay off.
So the second part of the question is, what about property tax for 14 acres in an area which could be developed? I mean, how does that work, I guess?
Well, since it's zoned agricultural and has been for
Okay.
quite a while,
So they
the
can
property
less
taxes are moderate. They're
I see.
not really an expense that will.
And is that a permanent thing? You cannot get that rezoned? In other words, if you got really short on money and you decide, well, we really need some money, then you could subdivide or something. I guess you wouldn't want to do that.
Well, that would be kind of counter to the entire purpose of having founded the organization. I think that we're not, there are no plans in the works to do anything like that.
Right.
Indeed, the conservation easement that we're working on would tie our own hands as much as anybody else. That would not be anything that, I don't know if you can have a conservation easement that goes into perpetuity, but at least you can definitely do like a 7,500-year sort of easement. So that's the plan. We really are hoping that financially the project will continue to grow and become more self-sustainable as the farming becomes more efficient and as more community members just get involved and have an interest in maintaining it as a farm. And as a place of community gathering and community education.
So if one does a apprentice, they would need to buy a share of the production, right?
There's a tuition for the program. We do have some scholarships available, but the tuition for the program is $750. A great deal of that, if you really use vegetables, is made up for in the value of your CSA share. Last year, the CSA shares, the cost to the public was $600, and the actual value of the produce was a little over $650.
So the $750 that you pay for the apprentice would take care of the $600.
Right, yeah, I mean,
Covered by that.
but we don't even necessarily think of it quite that way. I mean, really, the tuition for the apprenticeship is for the time that our farm manager spends guiding your work in the fields, teaching you new methods, the staff time involved in organizing field trips and paying our speakers and all of those expenses, just running the organization, keeping the lights on, all of those things.
Right.
Is your farmer's market exclusive to the produce you produce, or do other farmers come in on whatever day it's open?
Oh, well, we don't run a farmer's market. We sell at the Ferguson market, and these past couple of years we've been also at the Maplewood market. Next year we're planning on doing the Tower Grove one instead, actually. So yes, there are quite a number of other farms and farmers represented at all of those markets.
Do you ever have a group that buys the apprenticeship and so that the members could partake rather than an individual?
A group? Like what sort of group are you thinking of?
Well, Linda's here, but Linda, we have this community garden and, there's 30 plots and, we could have a significant interest in learning about organic farming. I don't know.
Well, we have another, about 15 spots open in our program that we would accept. So if lots of your gardeners are interested in joining the program, we would welcome you guys. But generally the way that we've done that has just been, it's open to public application and individuals submit applications. Usually, we've had a few couples do it, and some people ask about their family, but usually then it turns out that, one person is just more excited about the program. Sometimes parents ask, can I send my teenager? No, something bad.
Two questions. Someone who has gone through the apprenticeship, what is he, what have some of your graduates done? What have they learned enough that they can accomplish on their own?
That's a great question. I appreciate that. Our apprentices, they're really diverse themselves, and so they're engaged in diverse enterprises now. Some of our graduates that we brag about, they're all great people, but Mary Ostafy, graduate 2011, she founded the first community garden downtown, Urban Harvest STL, and she's also in the process of raising funding to do a rooftop CSA downtown. So she has a building that the owner would love to have turn into a rooftop farm, and it was actually built to be a parking garage, but for some reason they didn't complete the 4 floors of parking garage that they had originally planned to. So it's built to bear a load of 4 floors of cars. So it's actually a great place to put down landscape fabric and bring in, many cubic feet of dirt and grow food on a rooftop in the city. So that's one gal who's doing that sort of thing. Several of our apprentices have gone on to do full-time apprenticeships on other farms. Some of the farms that they're working on include Three Rivers in Elsa, Illinois, and Riverbend Roots in Godfrey, Illinois. We have a few apprentices who started their own more traditional farms. One gal, Jamie Bryant, and her husband went back to the husband's 7th-generation family farm in the Columbia Columbia area, Fayetteville actually. Fayette, I think it is. And they have now been farming for 2 seasons, and they founded the Fayette Farmers Market. And they are in the process of diversifying their business by bringing in agritourism, so hosting farm dinners and like opening their house as a B&B for people who would like to stay on a farm and, you know, experience a few hours of farming on a Sunday morning, but not do it full time. So about 30% of our graduates or so are engaged in farming, in commercial farming in one way or another. And other people are more interested in doing sort of community endeavors like starting a community garden or a school garden. One of our graduates did a really interesting project with EarthDance these past couple of summers. She's a retired middle school teacher, and she wanted to find a way to bring middle school students to the farm because she had had a really fabulous experience and she found it really transformative. So she started Camp EarthDance with us, and we did a week-long camp for middle schoolers these past 2 years. It was a lot of work. It was really rewarding. We had 10 the first year and 17 this past year as our campers, and they would come each morning to the farm and spend a couple of hours learning about the farm and doing some farm work. And then we brought them back to Ferguson Middle School and prepared a meal utilizing some of the things that were available on the farm, and cooking from scratch with teenagers is an adventure. But they all said that they got a lot out of the camp and really enjoyed it. So some of the things our graduates have been up to.
I think I read something a couple of years ago about a organization similar to yours, but somewhere I thought it was yours, that was focusing on teaching immigrants to farm.
Oh, yeah, I know who that is. It's not us. The International Institute has a project called Global Farm. And so the International Institute works with refugees to St. Louis. And I mean, I think they're a national organization, so they work with refugees in whatever city that local chapter is based in. The farm manager for St. Louis Global Farms was actually an employee of EarthDance's a couple of years ago, and so she's moved on to kind of doing this other thing that she's more in charge of, and she works with refugee farmers. And I have met a few of the graduates of the Global Farm program, and they are working in their field in St. Louis, and that's really wonderful because they bring you know, that diversity and vitality to the scene. They're growing unique vegetables that are different than what we are, what we're growing. So it's just very cool to see people.
Where is their land?
It's somewhere in the midtown, like the
South
Industrial.
South City.
Well, II is in South City, but I think that their farm is more like midtown. I feel like it's like kind of the industrial outskirts of the slough area, maybe Central West Endish.
Yeah, not quite Central West End, but
South.
yeah.
The lady works in the International.
I don't know about it though. Yeah, but it is a really wonderful thing because many people come from a rural background and they have all this knowledge about how to grow the foods that they like to eat, and they can't find them around here, and so they can grow, and then they can sell things at the markets. It's a great project.
The manure and going to the zoo. What did he find out? What works well? And time, and can you still go to the zoo and get some manure?
That is a fascinating question. The latter question, I do not know the answer. I think that Al kind of did that as a lark for a few years, and then he decided that it was a lot easier to just use the manure that the mules that already live on his farm were producing. So I will investigate whether there are any records of what he liked best. But as far as I know, he mostly ended up using the mule.
I remember something advertised and it was called Zudu. No, really.
Yeah,
It would be,
I don't want it.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if that's sold at, you know, where, or whatever. I don't know if they sell it at the zoo, but they might, someone might be coming there and repackaging it, to sell some of the local.
I can remember, but I haven't seen
That
it's called Zudu.
a local alpaca ranch. There's a woman in North County who rescues alpacas that are like injured, or maybe they were in circuses, or people had them as pets and decided they didn't want an alpaca anymore. So she like flies around the country and rescues alpacas. She does share their manure, which are called alpaca beads.
Like a bee?
Dirk, what do you?
Well, speaking of animals, you mentioned buying a tractor. Did you use any draft animals on the farm?
No, that definitely, since we didn't own the farm until just this past spring, it really wouldn't have been practical for us to house animals. There's no one like living on the farm at this point, so it's just like an animal is a whole other level of care. Although I'm curious to see this woman, Jerry Villarreal, who is going to start raising her chickens at EarthDance, how that works out for her.
So is there a parking space then?
Is there a barn?
A barn and?
No, well,
Okay.
chickens don't actually.
No, not for chickens, but for the mules that
Well,
were there.
so there are the remnants of those buildings.
Okay.
They're not in good repair. We're actually forming a partnership with someone who's moving on from work with Habitat for Humanity and the Restore. He's forming a new nonprofit called Refab. And the goal of his organization will be to salvage building materials and create new structures from those building materials. And so his plan is to work with EarthDance to salvage what can be from those old buildings and start building some of our new structures that we'd like to have on the farm, and that will be kind of a demonstration model for what he hopes to accomplish a little bit more commercially.
Very cool.
Do you offer tours?
Yes, we do. We have a regular tour schedule that begins in May and runs through October. So this past year it was every Tuesday afternoon and every third Sunday. It will likely change somewhat, but that information will be on our website.
Do you do beekeeping also, or is that something you're
There are bees on the farm. The beekeeper is Sharon Gibbons, who has hives like all over the state. She has a very large honey business, so she keeps 10 hives at her place right now. We would like to do the type of bee enclosure that the zoo has in the botanical garden. If you've been there and seen what they do with bees, they both have like the plexiglass hives where you are able to observe what's going on. But that is for another time, because right now Sharon is protective of her bees, and apparently they don't like to have another hive anywhere within like a mile.
So you rent that land to her, that she's got her house?
Well, I mean, it's not space that, it's bees are small.
Yeah.
So it's not actually a space that that anyone would be farming. It's kind of just like a woodsier area. No, so she doesn't pay rent. It's a win-win relationship. We want the pollinators there.
Yeah.
What are your plans for the future?
My personally, or
EarthDance Farms.
the immediate future, we are recruiting for this year's class of farm apprentices. We will be growing on an acre and a half, renting land to these other farmers who are, some of them graduates of ours, and some of them just folks from the public, including John Wilkerson still. He's in his 13th year of renting at the Miller Farm. We'll be launching a capital campaign probably within the next year or two in order to attempt to get that infrastructure for the farm that we would like to see, to have it become a place much more amenable to larger community gatherings and classes of all different types.
Oh yeah, you mentioned in the kitchen.
Yeah, commercial kitchen, that's in our maybe longer term, maybe 5-10 year plan.
Are there any more questions?
This is kind of a show and tell, but this is a new book that's out. I don't know how new it is, but it's called some are organic farmers in Minnesota, and they had the 5th generation farm. They had to move because of development, but it's a good read, and I haven't quite finished it, but it's the title is "Turn Here, Sweet Corn." It's about it's kind of the farm stand sign that they've used for many, many years, and it's a good way to learn about organic farming in a non-technical way.
It's very funny that you should bring up Turn Here, Sweet Corn. Atina Dipley is the author and the farmer behind Turn Here, Sweet Corn, and she's doing a workshop in St. Louis in partnership with EarthDance this Saturday. If you want to meet Atina, you can come hear her.
This Saturday, where?
This Saturday in Ferguson at St. Stephen's Church. You can come hear her speak about wholesale success for farmers. So that'll be.
They have a massive operation there.
They do, yeah. They sold to like Whole Foods, and yeah, they have a very big operation. Yeah, she'll be talking about maintaining the cold chain and packing and grading and post-harvest handling. These are subjects that are a little wonkier, so you are the already practicing farmer. But we did have one person register just because they said they really wanted to meet Atina and get her autograph.
What about the surrounding community around you? What is their, thoughts about having this farm in the middle of is it more of a residential area where you're at?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Well, they're very used to the farm for one thing. As I said, when Alan and Caroline were alive, they did hire teenagers from the neighborhood, so there are still people around that grew up spending their summers working on the farm. It is definitely a working class to lower middle class neighborhood. I think that a lot of the people are a little bit oblivious to the farm at this point, honestly. Like sometimes we'll talk to someone from the neighborhood and they're really surprised that it's a farm. They didn't know what was going on there. If you see, it's just remarkable. It's really, so the street that we're located on, it really you could easily pass it by without recognizing that it was a farm. There's the brick house at the very front, and then it's really set back. You have to kind of go up a little dirt road to really get to where the farm is. So you would be able to, if you just kind of weren't paying attention, you could just live there and not realize that there was a farm.
Has the Historical Society of Ferguson or the City of Ferguson, have they gotten very involved with what you're trying to keep a part of their history?
One of the members of the Ferguson Historical Society is a board member for EarthDance, and she's definitely very interested in making sure people are aware that the Miller Farm is a historic site that people should know about and can visit and celebrate that history, because it was really a farming community. Right? There's a larger and significant history to be written about all the farming that was going on there. Kinloch, which has, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it has gotten a bad reputation as not being a very safe place, and definitely lower income, was historically a free black farming community. There was a significant portion of land that was deeded to a whole community of freed slaves, and so there were many African American farmers farming in Kinloch for a long time before it turned into a suburban neighborhood, and then later into more of a depressed neighborhood, and now it's really kind of a ghost town because the airport bought out a great deal of it with development plans that have not come to fruition.
Kinloch.
Kinloch. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a neighboring community to Ferguson.
Do you know of any farms that do hire summer help?
Yeah, lots.
Yeah. My daughter said, "Yeah, I'd like to work on a farm this summer." What avenues could she?
There are websites, so I would encourage her to Google farm internship, farm apprenticeship, Missouri. Mm-hmm. Two that I know of off the top of my head, although I don't know what their commitment is, like when you need to start, are Riverbend Roots and Three Rivers.
Okay.
Where are those two farms?
They're both in Illinois, but they're less than an hour commute, 35 to 45 minutes. both of them also sell at most of the St. Louis markets like Tower Grove and Shockley.
Should community gardeners or backyard gardeners, should they look on EarthDance as a resource?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage you to come check out what we're doing. At this point, our classes are geared more towards farming level sort of practices. But I think that you can definitely learn some things from the larger scale that you can apply to what you're doing in the backyard or a community garden. And also just keep checking in with us because we do have a goal of serving people in a lot of different contexts. So yeah, the goal is that at a future point with more capacity, we'll be able to do classes that are more geared towards a homesteading type of practice.
On your organics, is there a certain path that you're following on your organic production, or do you try different methods like biodynamics and different things like that, or
Yeah, that's an interesting.
what's your philosophy with your organic farm?
Well, it's been largely driven by our particular farm manager. We've had 2 farm managers so far, and we're very sad to be losing our current farm manager, April Shelton. She is moving back to Colorado, where she and her significant other own property, and their tenants recently left it, and they want to go maintain their property. April was very interested in biodynamics, but it's a huge system, so she was only picking up, certain practices from it. She wasn't, practicing a comprehensive biodynamic approach, which involves like planting with the moon, so lunar planting calendar, and utilizing inputs that you make yourself, some out of like ground crystals, some from different types of manure that were aged in animal body parts, like you might age steer manure in a horn in the ground. It's very involved. So it's a whole, it's a system that you would have to go learn very specifically. I'd say more of our practices are kind of mainstream organic. We do a lot of cover cropping with nitrogen fixing crops. We do mulching with straw, so deep mulching to protect the soil and conserve water. And all organic inputs, we do use ones that we buy as a general rule, like fish emulsion and seaweed.
When you said the tea, because that's sort of an offshoot of biodynamics, that's why I was asking that particular question.
Where's your favorite place to buy seed?
Well, EarthDance buys most of our seed from Johnny's. They're a good provider of some heirlooms, a lot of really good hybrids, and they do provide a lot of organic seed, and they give us a nice discount. My personal favorite place to buy seed is probably Seed Savers. We purchase a few of our things from Seed Savers, things that we can't get from Johnny's that we like.
Will you be teaching these mainstreaming techniques you just mentioned in the previous question to the Monday night classes, to the general public?
Yeah, well, a lot of our Monday night classes are a little bit more focused on business aspects of farming, but the things that I was just speaking about, things that I would consider the soil stewardship, we will have a couple of classes that will be open to the public on that. A lot of since our apprentices are kind of learning the techniques whenever they work in the field, and they usually do, they're 8 hours a week or so. So they're getting pretty exposed to the actual techniques of farming and gardening. And then the classes, we try and use a little bit more of that time to go into things like wholesaling and operating a CSA, preservation, some of those things that are harder to learn in the fields.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it's been an hour. If anyone needs to go, please feel free. I'm sure Rachel, if there are more questions, we can continue with this. I'm sure Rachel will be happy to answer questions individually. I see a hand up back there, so let's keep going.
But I won't be hurt if you need to get going.
Do you have a card, Rachel?
I do, yeah, they're sitting out already, actually, on the same table with the recycled magazine.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had any good place to buy basic tools, and I'm also thinking about getting a seeder, just a basic seeder. Do you have any suggestions on, do you have any of those? And
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't sell them. I mean, we have some of those tools. We have a seeder. We have a lot of cultivating tools. We have like a lot of long handled hoes and some greens chopping things. Those are some of the hand tools that we work with. I would go with Johnny's. I know them, and they seem to carry really high quality tools.
To where?
Johnny's
Oh, okay.
Select Seed and other garden supplies.
How many other organic farms are in the metropolitan area?
Yeah, well, that would kind of depend on how you're defining organic is one thing. There's certified organic, which we are not yet, but we are in the process of getting our certification. We've started that whole process. And then there's also so many of these, like Visit a Farmers, the garden kind of places. So, I mean, I really can't even answer your question. Off the top of my head, something like a dozen spring to mind that I would describe as farms within the within probably an hour radius of here, but I'm sure there's more.
Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for putting up with the lack of